Hello fam, myself Anushka Jan and I am currently pursuing BTech in CSC with Artificial Intelligence and Data Engineering. And today I am here to explain you how to make AR models. But before that, let me quickly explain you what is AR model. So, what is AR model? AR model or entity relation model. Entity relation model is a model for identifying entities to represent the database. The AR model also specifies the enterprise schema that represents overall logical structure of a database graphically. It explains the relationship among the entities present in the database. It is used to model real-world objects like a person, car, or a company, that relation between these real objects. Or I can say it is the structural format of the database. Now, let me explain you the components of AR model. AR model includes entities, attributes, and relationships. Entities are further divided into strong entity and a weak entity. Attributes are further categorized into 4 different components that are key attribute, composite attribute, multi-valued attribute, and derived attribute. Relationships are also further categorized into 4 components: one-to-one relation, many-to-one relation, many-to-many relation, and one-to-many relation. Now, let me explain you all of these one by one. So, entities. Entities are basically the object that has some physical existence. Now, it has strong and weak entity. The strong entity are having the primary key. Primary key is something that having no null values plus unique. So I can write it, it's a unique in nature plus not null. The weak entity is something that doesn't have any uniqueness in it, but also it can't contain not null values. It also does not have not null values. Now let me explain you the key attribute. So attributes are something which are having the properties of entities. For example, you are taking the example of the urban company. Urban company having the entities like the customer, service provider, services, bookings, and feedback, payments. So if I take its one attribute, that is, if I take its one entity, that is our customer, so the customer should have some attributes. For example, his or her name, ID, the customer ID, and address of the customer, and the other things. So all the things that customer entity includes are called attributes. So now here the key attribute. The key attribute is the primary key, or I can say it is the unique value. So now the composite are having many other attributes in it. For example, the address. Address includes the state, PIN code, your country, house number, zip code, and the other values. So it it is the further part of the address. So I can say it is a composite value. So many other values it includes. Now multi-values. Multi-values are having many other values in it. Are having many values. For example, the phone number. Phone number having 10 digits number. So it having many values. For example, your address. Address is also a multi-valued because it's a very long valued digit. For example, zip code. Zip code is having the 6-digit values. So you can also categorize into the multi-valued attribute. Now the derived attribute. Derived attribute is something that came from the other attribute. For example, age. Age is a derived attribute. How? If we already have the date of birth in our attributes, so age will be a derived attribute. For example, you are born in 2000s. So now your age will be 24. So how I calculated your age now? From your date of birth. You taken birth at 2000 and now you are 24. So it is the derived value. So come from other attribute. Now, let me tell you about relationships. Relationships are the representations that associates between the entity types. For example, 1-1. So, here the student enrolled in one course. If I say that the industry provide only one course and there is only one student, so it enrolled in the only one course. Okay, or a customer can only give one feedback at a time for its or her booking. If I say about an urban company, many one is like for a urban company, you want to choose many services at a time, but you are choosing it from one service provider. For example, you are choosing the facial treatment and the laser treatment and the other treatments of the face, but you are choosing it from the one service provider. So it is like many from one, many to many. For example, there are many services in the urban company. Also, there are having many service categories. For example, many services for the face, and it having the faces categories like spa, the laser treatments and the other categories. So many to many. One to many means one person choosing many things. Like one customer is choosing many services here. So it will be like one to many. I think we are clear with the components of ER model. Now let me explain the symbols of ER model. Yes, each and every entity component is represented by some symbol. So, for example, the entities. Entities are represented by rectangle. So, the entities you have to represent in a AR model under the rectangle. And attributes. So for attributes, you are going to represent it under the ellipse. For example, if you need to explain the attribute of composite attribute, the key attribute you have to like this only, but if you are explaining or drawing the composite attribute, so how will you do that? So here is the example. How will you do that? So it's a composite attribute. And what if you need to draw a derived attribute? So how will you draw a derived attribute? Simply, this is how you're gonna draw a derived attribute. Just its border is a dotted border. So this is a derived attribute. Now, if you want to tell the multi-valued attribute, so how you gonna draw it? Simply just this is how you gonna draw a multi-value. So this is how a multi-valued attribute looks like. So this is how a multi-valued attribute looks like. Now, how you will represent the relationship? So here you go. How? So here is the way to represent the relationships. This is called a relationship symbol. So if you need to draw a relationship between the entities, so you will gonna draw it like this. And and if you have to tell which relationship it is, one to many or many to one, so you have to write it above this. Here you have to write it like, if it is one to many, just write it one and on the other side write it many. So this is one to many relationship. Okay, if it is one to one, just write it one here. If it is many to one, just write it many here. If it is many to many, just write m here. So this is how you're gonna represent the components of the AR diagram. So that's it. You are done with AR module symbols. Now let's make our AR model. So you are cleared what is AR model, what are its components, why it is used, and what are its symbols. So now let's make an AR model for urban company. So if many of you are here don't know what actually urban company does, So, Urban Company is a technology platform offering a variety of services at home. Customers use this platform to book services such as beauty treatments, haircut, massage therapy, cleaning, plumbing, carpentry, and many other services of their choices or that the company provides. It is also known as the urban clam. Here, employee came to your houses and do the services which you choose. So now let's make the AR model. AR model. So now, according to you, what should be the entities for the urban company? According to me, first entity should be customer. So let's write the customer here. And the other entity should be services. And services should be provided from some service provider like so from where we can provide from like who will provide us the services and from where we can choose services, right? And customers should also provide the feedback, right? Feedback should also be one of the entity. Moreover, payment. Payment is really very important. So let's make entity here as well for the payments. Now, how they are interlinked with each other. Let's make their relationships as well. So, how a customer related to services? So, that customer books the services. So, what kind of relationship it should be? One to many, one to one, or many to many. So, customer is a one, right? At a single time, only one customer can book services. But one customer, how many services the customer can book? Like we have no foundations for the services. A customer can book many services, as many as he or she wants. So, one customer can book many services. So, it should be one to many relation. Now, how service provider and service categories are related to each other. The service provider is the one who provides services, right? And services are chosen from the service categories. Chosen from services categories. So how a service provider and services in relationship? So one service provider provides many services here, right? Like many services are provided from one service provider. For example, there is a service provider of a spa, so or a saloon. So that saloon service provider provides many services related to saloon like spa, hair cutting and the other things. But if a service provider is from services like cleaning, so it will provide you services like cleaning of the ACs and the households. So here one to many relation. Now let's talk about services to service categories. So many services are chosen from many service categories. There are no boundation for it. So here it is many to many relation. So how a customer provides a feedback? So a customer provides a feedback, right? So here how it provides a relation here. So one customer provides one feedback at a time, because customer can't provide the feedback for the saloon which he or she never opted for. If he or she opted for the services like cleaning, so he or she will provide the feedback for services like cleaning only. So per customer provide per feedback for one service or the other services. So here it should be 1 to 1. Now, how services linked to the payments? So here they are linked to the payments by the services from relation, that is confirmation. Like when the customer confirms the services he or she wants, then he or she can book it from the payments, like can confirm it by the payments. So for many services only one payment should done, so it should be many to one. Now let's make attributes for our ER diagram. So for a customer, the attribute should be customer ID, writing it with the CID, and customer name, and his or her date of birth, moreover his phone number, you can put this phone number in a multi-valued attribute, and customer address, and customer age. And age here is a derived attribute, so we'll make it a derived attribute symbol, that is dotted one. And the address here are the composite attribute. So what does address includes extra data, that is pin code, street, house number, state. The pin code is a multi-valued attribute, so let's make the simple multi-valued. So this is a composite attribute, multi-valued attribute, derived attribute, and these are the normal one, key attribute, and this is a key attribute. Now let's go towards the books. So it can also have some attributes like booking ID. Towards the books, so it can also have some attributes like booking ID. Also includes the customer ID. And the other things, it includes the date, time, and status. Now let's make for the services. So what does the services include? Services includes the service ID, and availability. Requirements. And if I say and whatever it can include, its description, right? Now it can have two attributes, like now the service category. The service categories may have the service category ID, service category ID, and the other things like which services you want to choose, their name, and its session and price. Now chosen from. So here chosen from you can have the service category ID, and SID, the service ID, now it's a many to many relationship, so it cannot have the primary key uh, like this. Like you can't say that this is a primary key or this is a primary key, or you can't merge both of these keys. So what you can say, like both of these together is a primary key, or you can make one another primary key, the chosen from primary key. Like here you can give it other IDs, right? You make this the from ID, and this is how it will be a primary key, and the other keys are, both the other keys are the foreign keys. Now it confirms. Now let's make the attributes for feedback. So in feedback, customer can have the feedback ID, and ratings, but for what they are having, like FID ratings, so they are having for the booking ID, right? So it should contain booking ID. Now for payments, we have payment ID, and total amount. And how it is paid. Payment method. Here. So now let me write. The payment methods can be have different attributes, like methods can include cash on delivery, or it can include payments by cards like debit card, credit card, or it can include by UPI. So these are the composite attributes for method. Now for the service providers, attributes should be the service provider ID, the service provider ID, experience, and yeah, and it can include the requirements and availability. Sorry, it should include the availability. So it's a basic AR model for the urban company. You can also include entity like employees here and can make a relationship with the service provider, or you can add as many attributes you want here according to your choice. It's just a simple model that is made by me, for that all the knowledges we have gained today. So thank you.